Fans have been complaining about Muse's set lists, saying that they're too rigid, samey, and the wrong songs are being played. Or even that their current shows are boring. I've seen it being said that their set lists used to be better, that Muse have forgotten their older songs, often seen as their better ones. That statement alone begs a question I'm not even going to try and answer here. But what I am going to address is the topic of Muse's set lists getting predictable and boring. However, would you be surprised if I said that it's always been like this? Or at the very least, like this for a while. That feeling of better songs are being dropped has been around for a while now, and it's only going to get worse as time goes on. Man, that's a gloomy start to the video.
Oh, that's depressing. You're a grown-ass man.
Is this video going to solve the problem? Well, unless Matt Bellamy sees it, I doubt it. And is it going to make sense? Who knows? So how about we look at this video as therapy and try and resolve our feelings around Muse shows not having good songs in them anymore? Well, that's a really overly opinionated view I've got. It's my video, I can say what I want. Now, I think the best place to start is setting the time frame for a typical show. Doors will open at 6 PM with the first support act on at 7. A 2-act support, each with a 45-minute to an hour slot, which includes time either side for setup and pull down. So let's round it up and just say the whole support slot takes 2 hours. There's a lot of rounding up with these timings, and there's all sorts of factors I can't really account for, so take these timings with a pinch of salt. The cutoff point for a show will be from 10:30 to 11 PM, and that's non-negotiable. There will be all sorts of laws that dictate no excessive noise beyond this time.
Just keep the noise down, okay?
Even if that time were to go over, then massive fines start being issued. People will also probably want to go home, and there's also the pack down time that needs to be factored in by the crew, which will take hours. So what do we have so far? A start time of 7 PM with a solid end time of, let's be generous and say 11 PM. Lose 2 hours for the support, meaning the band will hit the stage at 9:30 or so, leaving an hour and a half to do the show and only a certain amount of time to fill that with songs.
God, that's tight.
So you might say, get rid of the support acts.
Get rid of them.
I would say that's incredibly unprecedented and quite stupid. Having support acts is industry standard practice. It helps these smaller or lesser known bands get more recognition so that their fan base can grow, and in turn, they can get to a level where they're selling at stadiums. Often you get support acts that have a similar sound or feel to the headliner, so that you can expect the audience to like the support act, which helps out massively with the next point, which is that the support acts are there to help warm up the audience. It would be a lot to expect from the headline act to hit the stage cold and get the crowd going from scratch, as well as doing the whole show. Also, without support acts, the music industry would just sort of grind to a halt, as new bands don't have a way of getting in front of large audiences in major bands' tours. Support acts need to stay. I would just ask that they fit in well with the headliner as best as possible. Historically, the best ones have been Nothing But Thieves and Royal Blood, and less so for The Warning. But that's just my opinion. Even with all that in mind, let's say they did cut the support acts. Do you think that extra 2 hours would translate into the show? Now that would mean doubling the length of their show, which is already pretty energetic. Would they be able to keep their energy up? And would Matt's voice be able to keep going for so long, show after show, as we're talking about an entire tour here and not just a one-off show? What would they fill the space with? You'd have to imagine it may be filled with more pre-recorded soundscapes and more abstract stuff. Personally, I like the instrumental stuff. Give me a show with niche, minimum and forced in, and I'd be a very happy little muser. And all of this brings me on to... There have been some impressive one-off set lists in the past. For example, the 2006 Nottingham show, which played all of Black Holes and Revelations, and the Reading and Leeds Festival from 2011, which played all of Origin of Symmetry. So who are they playing for? Because that plays a huge influence on what goes on a set list. There's two main sides to this: new audiences and more long-term fans. With newer audiences, more recognisable songs are needed to bring them in and ensure they have a good time attending the show. While more long-term fans would be far more familiar with the band's discography and would welcome more obscure songs. And of course, they must be balanced as best as possible.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
We've seen in numerous tours that older album songs have appeared in shows. Ruled by Secrecy, Citizen Erased, Dead Star, Assassin, and Fury. Muse haven't forgotten these songs exist, and the fact they consistently show up in sets every so often shows that they still want to play them. But how do you construct a setlist for Muse to balance both the newer and older audiences? Now, I've never done this before, and I don't have access to Muse's record label's market research, so I'm going to gather the data in my own way. Let's start with the popular songs. These would be seen to be songs that go down well, no matter the audience. So an easy way to see what's being listened to would be Spotify. Oh brilliant, really plumbing the depths of what's possible, Harry. What next? Are you going to say that they use lights when they perform? So these are the 10 most popular songs, and I can confirm at time of recording, they all appear on current set lists. You'll also see that there's no songs from Will of the People in here. Not surprising, as the other albums are much older and therefore have accumulated more listens. So we take these 10 popular ones and sprinkle in ones from Will of the People. And just for the hell of it, what's the popularity for songs on Will of the People? Of the 10 songs on the album, only 7 are still played to this day. At time of recording, Liberation has only been played a handful of times in theatre shows, while Ghosts and Euphoria have never been played. The cowards. And to go a step further, if these numbers are anything to go by, they'll never be played, much like songs on other albums. If I had to guess the songs that would survive the tour and be played in future ones, I'd have to say Won't Stand Down, Compliance, and possibly Verona, though I'm not entirely convinced. So anyway, we've gathered 17 songs for a set list. Where do the others come from? Currently, Muse shows run around a 24-song set, so we need another 7 songs. There's very little representation here from other albums, with absolutely nothing from Simulation Theory. A little bit unsurprising, as it's much younger than the other albums, and it's considered by the fanbase to have been a bit of a misstep for Muse. The additional 7 songs come from putting in singles from older albums and adding in some of those much-loved instrumentals. I can never shake this feeling that whenever I see Matt wearing the glove, he's about to challenge you to a children's card game to decide the fate of the world.
Huh? You triggered my trap card!
It's this situation that I believe is why fans are saying their set lists are boring, predictable, and only appeal to generic audiences. Now don't get mad at me for this, but it's been this way for years.
Some so subtle you might not have even noticed, but your brain did.
To date, Muse have released 9 studio albums, and how best do you represent them? Well, the only way I see is through the successful singles. We've already covered how they have only a limited amount of time in which to play these songs, so tough decisions have to be made.
But you can't do this to me.
You know how much I sacrificed?
And they'd be smart to pay attention to data on what songs people are listening to. With this exponential growth of songs of which to choose, it's getting a little unsustainable to balance them all together. With each new album, this situation is just going to get more and more difficult, probably to the point where you're going to get 1 or 2 songs from each album, as the setlist must contain an overwhelming majority of songs from the then current album.
It's so dense, every single image has so many things going on.
Take a look at setlists from the Black Holes and Revelations tour onwards. With each tour, they must fill that limited time frame with more and more songs, which is just going to get worse over time. You can see here from the song pulls from each tour, the songs played in the album which they're from quickly paint a picture of the tough situation that they're in. Once you get to the song pull for the Will of the People, you can really see how dire the situation is. Things like Interlude, Prelude, and Drill Sergeant aren't really songs, they're just filler. Apart from suggesting that Muse know those middle albums are pretty weak, it clearly shows the challenge they have of what to populate those set lists with. The venue dictates the type of experience you'll have at a Muse show. Do you want to go to an experience filled with cinematic visuals, Matt and Chris running around to hopefully hit their marks in time for the songs, and literal fire? Then go to a stadium or festival show. Do you want the visuals but with no fire and have it inside? Then go to an arena show. How about no stunning visuals, simple lighting rigs, and deep cuts in the set list? Then get yourself down to a theatre show. What about Muse right in your face, feeling the literal sweat not just on yours but the person next to you, and maybe even the band? Then get yourself a time machine to go back to 1999 or the Cavern Club gig in 2022. The bigger the venue, the higher the production costs need to be to put the show on. So if you're the organizer for the production, how do you guarantee a way to cover the costs and make a profit? Simple. Ensure the setlist is filled with recognizable and popular songs that are going to please the audience. Those inflatables aren't going to inflate themselves after all. With smaller theatre shows, there's a lot more room to take risks, as the audience is way more likely to be filled with more hardcore fans who want to see the deep cuts.
away with it not playing as one, but of course not.
The whole issue comes down to fan reaction, and en masse, there's no bigger Muse fan than the French. See, it sounds like a stereotype, but it's just true. French fans get some of the best stuff, like the By Request show. So the best way to go and get a general Muse fan view that isn't mine is to go to France and ask them. And I know what you're thinking, to go all the way to France for a silly little video like this just to ask people what they think about Muse setlists is a crazy, crazy idea. And it is crazy. So that's what I did. Excuse me.
What?
You're French.
I'm sorry.
You're French.
Yeah, I'm French.
What do you think of Muse?
What?
Muse?
I don't know that. The museum?
The band Muse?
I know museum or Muse. No, I don't know that. Please go away. Please.
But what about?
No, bro.
But I need tell me what do you think of Muse?
This is shit. I mean, I don't know that band, so it's shit for me. You know?
But
what? Okay. Yeah. Go away.
So what does it mean to be a fan of Muse for you? Like, what puts them above other bands to you?
J'écoute Muse depuis plus de 15 ans. Et ils ont toujours été au-dessus des autres groupes de musique parce que leur musicalité, les paroles, les instruments, le côté rock des chansons et des concerts est au-dessus des autres groupes, pour moi en tout cas.
What drew you to Muse?
J'ai commencé à écouter Muse en 2010 ou 2009 par là avec The Resistance, juste après la sortie de l'album. Et c'était au moment où je m'impliquais beaucoup dans la pratique de la batterie, de la guitare, ensuite de la basse. Et du coup, apprendre leurs morceaux, pour moi, c'était un peu un challenge. Et ça m'a permis de développer beaucoup mes compétences musicales. Donc ça, allié à ma passion pour le groupe en général, avec leur musique, et bah, ça m'a fait continuer pendant plusieurs années derrière ça. Et ça m'a permis de rencontrer beaucoup de gens qui sont devenus des amis très très proches depuis ce moment-là.
So what are your favorite experiences at Muse shows?
C'est difficile pour moi de choisir une expérience particulière ou un concert favori de Muse. J'ai été à 9 concerts jusqu'à maintenant et je trouve que chaque concert est vraiment unique de par la setlist, l'ambiance générale, les personnes avec qui on y va. Et du coup, c'est compliqué de choisir, mais si je devais choisir une expérience, il y a eu l'arrivée de Brian Johnson à Reading Festival, qui était une belle surprise. Ou alors le concert de Muse au Stade de France en 2019, parce que on avait attendu 2-3 ans avant de les revoir, et du coup c'était un bon moment avec ma sœur et des amis très proches. Et en deuxième, peut-être que je dirais bien évidemment La Cigale, parce que c'était un show intimiste avec une très bonne setlist.
Can you tell me what frustrates you about current Muse shows?
Très honnêtement, j'ai été à 9 concerts de Muse, et mis à part un ou deux qui avaient une setlist un peu spéciale, c'est vrai que chaque concert de Muse est identique au précédent, c'est-à-dire que si on va à un concert sur une tournée et qu'on y retourne 3 ou 4 jours après, un mois après, on aura exactement la même setlist. Et franchement, s'ils pouvaient revenir un peu à ce qu'ils faisaient avant, intégrer plus de B-side et enlever un Madness ou un Disco Desire, très franchement, ils pourraient revenir à des B-sides. Et parce que moi j'en ai marre, j'aimerais bien avoir un petit Showbiz ou un petit Eternal Limit, parce que franchement il y en a ras-le-bol quoi. Franchement, intégrer plus de B-sides. En plus on est en France, on est des fans français, on fait plein de fan projets, donc il y en a marre, hein, il y en a marre. Voilà, j'en ai ras-le-bol. Franchement, intégrer plus de choses. Voilà, ce serait vraiment ce que j'ai à dire. Parce qu'il y en a marre. Non, parce qu'on est en France, vive la France.
Stop! That is from an obscure language known as French.
Mr. Data, the French language for centuries on Earth represented civilization,
To get an idea of what Muse fans really want, I asked people to tell me what they thought were the boring songs. And here are the results. Now, some of these aren't that surprising. Take Madness, for example. It was mentioned 17 times to be removed. By far the most mentions of any song in my survey to be removed from setlists. There's a number of choices in here that I strongly disagree with and don't believe that they're boring songs. For example, Verona, Time Is Running Out, and Kill or Be Killed. There's also some really interesting interpretations here, like all of the instrumentals. Like, what the fuck does that actually mean? I can only imagine that they're just conflating Behold the Glove with all of their instrumentals, because the rest of them are absolutely banging. And there's also my personal favourite, anything off the last few albums. Ooh, red hot take right there, watch out everyone. So we've established what people don't want, and I hear you ask, what do we replace them with? And so I asked for suggestions of what to bring back. And so here they are, which is a great number to start with, but I think we can do a lot better. I mean, one of the songs hasn't even left the set lists yet. So the final thing I asked for were fan favourites, and based on what I said earlier in the video, the more hardcore fan will want to see more deep cuts in shows. So this is the pool of songs we have to work with to make a fan-generated set list. And as it's a fan-sourced set list, I'll take forward the songs that have got more than one vote.
I love democracy.
Now, unfortunately, there's more options here than there is time available for the band to perform. So a way around this honestly massive issue would be to rotate the songs in the setlist. Not a big deal since Muse already rotate the songs in their setlists already. Now, in order to do that, which songs have a similar feel as to potentially have them be interchangeable on a setlist? Now, at the risk of the entire Muse fan community coming after me with pitchforks, I've taken it upon myself to turn this into a formula for the ideal hardcore Muse fan setlist. And this is what I came up with.
It's beautiful, Marcus. Oh, it's beautiful.
Now, it wasn't easy, but with the help of some very clever boffins,
I'm joined by a panel of brain spurts and mentalissimos, a veritable smorgasbord of cleverness that the world is rightly too respectful to eat.
I did it. For example, Sitters and Erased and Butterflies and Hurricanes. They've been compared previously as the band's big prog rock songs. Muscle Museum and Showbiz as the old school fan favourites. Invincible and Glorious may not seem to have much that connect them, but they're from the same era and there's something about them that just pairs well together. I will reinforce that this is a fan-generated setlist and not my own design. All I've done here is just give it some structure. And all of the suggestions just came from people putting forward their top 5 songs. There are some songs on here that I personally wouldn't pick, so perhaps in the future I'll make a video all about my ideal setlist. However, this fan-generated setlist is brilliant. It seems to do what Muse try and do and occasionally miss the mark on for their shows. There are big singles in here for sure, but spread throughout are album songs that carry with them a sense of attachment those big songs just can't do. Emotions and shit. Now, do I think a set list like this will ever see the light of day? Well, sadly no, not on its own anyway. We see that Muse are very comfortable with their current tour formula of big stadiums for reasons we've already covered. If you ever want to see a tour with set lists like this, and by that I mean set lists filled with deep cuts, then there has to be a full-scale Muse-led campaign advocating for this. And I believe if there was enough call for it, the band would respond. The band, the crew, and other associated individuals, particularly Tom Kirk, know how passionate the fanbase can be. He approached them to ask what they were going to do for the stadium shows in the country, and they responded with an incredibly choreographed light show with the audience's phones. This isn't a light show the light technician for Muse came up with. It was made by the Muse France group because they're so passionate about the band and they just want to get involved. The band know how much passion there is for the deep cuts. Historically, they've said it themselves.
I have a feeling every time we do By Request, this song is always going to win.
They've, on occasion, done small, intimate shows. The By Request shows are a prime example of this. From my perspective, a full-blown tour of set lists like this wouldn't be put in venues bigger than theatres, as those deep cuts will only attract a certain type of fan. I'm not sure if there are enough inadequate numbers in major cities across Europe and the US to justify stadiums. As we looked at earlier, the costs for stadiums are high. So the agreeable venue are theatres with capacities of 3,000 to 5,000. It might sound small, but those venues present less of a risk for the band from a financial perspective to put on a full-blown tour. And no matter what, I would guarantee those tickets would sell out. With that low risk and guaranteed audience, it's more enticing to play lesser known songs, especially if the tour is promoted as a deep cut tour. So what I'm asking for is Muse to do a deep cut theatre tour. I'm gonna be honest with you here. This video's been a bit of a journey for me and one that I've had in mind to make for a while. I've been aware of the issue regarding Muse's setlists for some time now, and I feel it's only stuck out to me so much because I'm such a big fan of theirs. For years I've read upon their setlists, their stage production, right the way down to the specific guitars Matt uses for each song, which makes me quite irritating whenever I see them live, as I always blurt out the song that's about to be played. Almost every single gig that I've been to of theirs, I've known exactly what they're gonna play and exactly what order it's going to be played in. It's really bad because I'll overhear people say, I hope they play such and such song, and I think to myself, that's just not gonna happen. Just that knowledge alone has given me the impression that their setlists are formulaic and predictable. There might be some variation on the setlist, but that's down to the venue type, from festival, stadium, arena, and theatre, but that difference isn't that wild. But within the process of learning more about the production side of things, I've come to realise the issues they have, which pretty much every touring musician has. That being, they only have a certain amount of time to perform, and there's only so much they can do to prepare for a tour that takes them across so many countries and cities. Take their lighting production for example. Each song will have its own design to set the right mood and resonate as best as possible with the audience. For example, you don't want a bunch of lasers for Verona, and for faster songs like Kill or Be Killed, you don't want the lighting to look like it'd be better suited for something like Blackout or Unintended. That production takes time to do, and it's all programmed in. It's not done on the fly. They're all created to set the mood. After all, huge amounts of money, talent, and people power goes into each show. So why, from a production point of view, would you not want them to look as best as possible? The exact same is true for their visual production. At their shows, every single image and video you see is song specific. For example, Rules by Secrecy has incorporated a ticking clock since the Absolution tour. There were these robot animations for Supermassive Black Hole, and there was also the puppet strings for the Handler on the Drones tour. Now take it a step further when they start adding in additional people into their performances, like the balloon gymnast for Blackout, the banker for Animals, and the dancers for the Simulation Theory tour. And it's that level of creativity in production that demands that they're used as often as possible. I think for me the worst culprit of the entire issue were the dancers for the Simulation Theory tour. They were such an integral part of the show that every time they showed up, they had to be used in a very specific way, which had the side effect of making every single performance very copy and paste. So yeah, I really wasn't a fan of the dancers. As for the music, which is the real reason I go and see Muse, even that has issues in some ways. A great example of this is a festival show they did in Belgium. They were starting out at Sidonia, but due to a technical fault they had to abandon it, only for them to later come back on and play Showbiz, which on its own sounds great. Showbiz is a big fan favourite. However, the bad part is it showed just how really unrehearsed they were for that song. The distortion for Matt's mic came on way too soon. He forgot the lyrics. And for me at least, the feeling was just sort of off for the majority of the song. All of which leads me to conclude they have to practice these songs to be perfect, otherwise cracks start to form, and when that happens, it really spoils the immersion. And I believe that what I said earlier about focusing on the popular songs gives them that focus on the visual and lighting design. All of that gives the feel that their performances are a bit copy and paste, and in some respects, they are. Touring is hard work, and especially on that level, and why would you not want to make it as easy as possible to get the most out of it? Saying all of that brings me back to my point of what I said at the end of the last section, which was pushing for a full-scale theatre tour. I believe that because of that simpler setup, it would be way more enticing for the band to play those simpler songs. It's not without its challenges. Over their career, they've released 9 studio albums, with over 100 songs from the albums alone, let alone B-sides and other material that they may have. No matter how you look at it, that is a lot of material they have to learn if they're ever going to do such a tour. And as we saw from the Showbiz issue, they have to rehearse it really well. Even if they were to do such a tour, I believe their set list still would be a bit formulaic. They just have a little bit more freedom to have some songs be interchangeable. At the risk of repeating myself, they sort of tested this with those by request shows. It demonstrated the still an audience for those songs and gave them a testbed of which to play them. And perhaps they just need more of a push to put a theatre tour on, which is where the idea of a Muse-led campaign comes in. Will it ever happen? I don't know. But if it ever were to, it would need a lot of coordination and an even larger amount of people all saying the same thing, a deep cut theatre tour. So if you've made it this far, thank you for watching. I asked earlier in the video if it was going to make sense, and I still believe that only you can answer that. So let me know what you thought about it in the comments. And also while you're there, Do let me know what your thoughts are on the matter of Muse's set lists and what the direction they're headed in. I'd really like to know. Like, comment, subscribe, please do. I spent weeks putting this video together, from writing it, filming it, editing it, and traveling. I literally went to France to film a section for this. So a huge amount of energy has gone into putting this all together. So any support that you could give, I'd be immensely appreciative of. And it just shows that people want to see what I like to make. I really love putting this stuff together, and I feel that this video is the biggest one I've done yet, and I want to do bigger and bigger stuff, and I just need an audience for it. So please, and thank you. I've been Harry, and thanks for watching.